VETtalk Radio is proudly supported by the Animal Referral Hospital.
This week.
Ever wondered why your cat might be fat?
Dogs are very, very susceptible to their owner's lifestyle. Cats not so much. We do other things to cats to make them fat rather than just shovel food down their throat.
And what's the easiest way to cut your dog's toenails?
People think that if I walk my dog, he'll wear his nails down.
Stand by for some practical tips from a master groomer.
So, how does acupuncture for horses actually work?
It kind of depends on whether you want the Chinese version or the Western version.
An equine vet explains all that and more. Also this week, fancy a ferret? Find out if this pocket pet is right for you. Plus, Dr. Sarah Goldsmid from the Animal Referral Hospital explains what a neurological condition actually is.
You can't even say it.
Yes, I did. I said it beautifully.
G'day, I'm Browne Pickering.
And I'm Kaye Browne.
All those stories and more right here on VETtalk, with our latest podcast available every Saturday on vettalkradio.com.au, and we're also available free in the iTunes store.
Okay, let's talk about fat cats. Now, obesity in cats is a growing problem, and according to an international animal behaviour expert, it's not just the owner's attitude towards food that's the cause. Cats themselves could actually be manipulating us.
And on the line we have Dr. Jonathan Bowen. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. I guess the first question to ask is it our fault that our pets are overweight?
It is in some ways. With dogs, it's actually a different situation than with cats. Dogs were pretty greedy and will eat most of the things that human beings will eat. So if you're a big pizza eater and you like eating curries and stuff like that, then your lifestyle is likely to impact your dog, because the chances are that the kind of leftovers you'll give are going to be high fat, high calorie. So dogs are very, very susceptible to their owner's lifestyle. Cats not so much. We do other things to cats to make them fat rather than just shovel food down their throat.
Well, they say that cats are very fussy and that we're their slaves. Why is it that we're possibly doing the wrong thing?
Well, there's been some very interesting studies looking at the way that people respond to cat vocalizations, and in one of them, they found that cats can actually learn to add a kind of signal into their purring noise, which is a kind of little bump at around 300 to 600 hertz in their frequency band in their purring, which adds urgency to it and makes it sound like they're demanding something. And that frequency bump is exactly in the same area as a baby vocalization.
I could totally relate to that. We recently looked after my daughter's cat for about 6 months, and boy, oh boy, he got to my heartstrings, and you know.
Yeah, and it's biologically almost impossible to ignore, because there's been some other studies looking at the way that people respond to baby vocalizations, and they switch on bits of your brain involuntarily in different ways than any other kind of sounds that we hear. So it looks like cats may be plugging into this kind of primeval response to baby vocalizations, and if they're sufficiently demanding, then that enables them to kind of push us into doing things that they want us to do.
Primeval and evil, I'd say. That is
absolutely not evil.
I'm joking. We do have a lot of fun on the show, but that is fascinating. And I always thought it was the really loud meow that you get right, whenever you walk in the kitchen that did the trick, but it's the purr.
Well, I think probably it's the combination. The purr is already in the right frequency range. That's already got the right tone, but it seems that cats can adapt the purring noise that's normally quite low pitched, and they can add in this extra little frequency bump to make it add that sense of urgency and demand. And one of the problems is that probably the cat is not asking for food; it's asking for something. And because we're biologically programmed to give food as a way of caring for things, it switches on that system.
So what would happen in a household of one or two cats, well, a couple of cats, let's say, and the owner says, right, you guys are not getting fed, I'm going to feed you every other day. Would that work? Would that help reduce some obesity in some obese cats?
Well, the way that we recommend people deal with this is to set up something called an activity feeder, which is a device that enables the cats to work and get the food instead of just giving them a bowl. And what that does is it slows down the rate of their food consumption so they feel satisfied before they've swallowed all of the food. So it enables them to meter out the food over the course of a day. And we say to the owners, just put down the food on the activity feeder and don't get involved in giving any any food. So it enables the owner to see that the cat's getting enough food and they don't need to be involved in this slightly distorted feeding ritual that they get caught up in.
Okay, so if you have a slightly tubby cat, don't blame yourself. What you need is an activity feeder. It sounds like a great idea, and that was international animal behaviour expert Dr. Jonathan Bowen.
An activity feeder. I wonder if that comes in a human version as well, because, one or two of us could, sort of probably do with having an activity feeder to work for our food. That's me I'm talking about.
Right, of course. I was thinking, I was trying to think of some people that we could mention, some names.
Me? Yeah.
There's Bob, there's Sharon, there's...
Look, we could all do with, walking before our meal times. And if our pussycats aren't doing much activity except going from the bowl to the bed to the bowl, good advice from Dr. Jonathan. You're listening to Vet Talk, heard every week right here on vettalkradio.com.au, or you can check us out on the iTunes store and download us absolutely free.
Well, here's something I know you love doing, KB, trimming our dog's toenails, right?
It's one of those things that, that's the reason I'm not a vet.
Or a groomer.
I like talking about it, but actually doing it, those that can do, those that can't talk about it. And clipping toenails is one of those things, but I do know that I have to do it sometimes, and I'm trying to learn. So we caught up with Master Groomer Christine Speerin from the grooming school and asked simply, what's the best way to clip a dog's toenails?
The best way to trim the dog's toenails is turning the dog's pad over and looking underneath the toenail. By looking underneath the toenail, you can see that the toenail is joined together. Where it's closer to the foot, it's actually joined together, and as it moves away from the dog, it is actually opens up like a hoof on a horse or whatever. So when you're trimming that nail, you do not want to trim the part that is all closed. The part that is open is where it needs to be.
So the part that's closed, that's called the quick, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's where your quick is. So it's not
I've been studying this.
You've been studying. And it's a way of actually seeing where the quick is. Now, the quick is part of the pulmonary system. So when a dog is stressed and excited, it's obviously going to pump faster. So when it's pumping faster, it's going to bleed, for sure.
If you get too far.
Yeah, so the best thing you can do is when you're trimming it, just do little increments at a time. And by doing little increments, no drama.
If we do actually manage to cut the quick and there's blood everywhere, and do we call an ambulance?
What I would always suggest is if you're going to trim nails is to have a preventative to stop bleeding on hand, and they're usually available at any pet shop. So it's just a styptic type powder, and you can use that or you can use corn flour.
I keep corn flour just in case.
Yeah, and you can use wet soap or stop, all those things. But at the end of the day, the best result you can have is by having a styptic powder.
So if we're cutting our own nails, we generally don't cut the quick, as it were, because it's sort of right behind the end of the finger. But if you cut a dog's toenails and you cut the quick, does it hurt the dog?
Well, my understanding that if it bleeds, it must hurt.
Okay.
Simple as that. And it is a movable thing, the quick.
So with the body being stressed, it'll grow?
Yeah, I'll actually see it moving when I'm trimming a nail.
Wow.
So you can actually, physically see it. So it is important to do tiny bits at a time, and then you don't have any drama.
You make it look easy. I've watched you trim doggies' toenails, and particularly my dog's. And my darling Matisse, even though he's only a tiny bichon, has the strength of an Iron Man when it comes to doing his toenails. How do you keep them calm while you do this?
They feed off your energies. So you've already anticipated that he's going to be quite hard to do. So he's going, okay, Mum's really worried. Why is she worried? So he puts on the struggle. So it's setting yourself up and your pet up for success. So if when you're doing it, if you set it up so that, okay, I know I'm going to be able to hold him securely, I know that it's all going to be positive. So having someone there with you and just tapping them on the top of the head, just little taps with the tips of your fingers, that often distracts your pet so that he's thinking, oh my God, why am I getting tapped on the head? And while he's getting tapped on the head, you can whip his nails off.
Oh, our dog's not that stupid.
Okay, I believe you.
What about the peanut butter cure? Have you heard of that?
Whoa.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
That's the one where they say you smear a whole lot of peanut butter on the fridge, outside of the fridge, and while the dog's licking the peanut butter off, you quickly whip in and go and get the toenails off.
Yeah, well, that'd do it too, wouldn't it? But yeah, with dogs, people and dogs, the fear with people have with doing nails is because it does bleed. But at the same instance, if they're not done, the dogs tend to be nearly crippled because their toenails, their toes are actually lifting up. They can't walk properly. They're going to slide. They're going to hurt themselves. And you'll notice them gnawing at their feet and doing all those things. So sometimes it takes a little bit of heart, and we say mean, yeah.
Well, chances are, hopefully, if someone has a professional groomer, someone like your good self, then they'll be able to show you how to do it.
Yes, and the important thing is that good reputable groomers should be just running little classes for people, for their pets, to show them how to manage their pets at home, because all these things need to be done in between visiting the grooming salons. It can be done weekly at dog nails, so, and especially as they get older.
There we go.
If I'm brave enough. Okay, I'm learning. I'm going to practice, and I'm going to take your advice. Thank you very much, Christine Speerin from the Grooming School.
Thank you.
Weekly.
Yep.
Are we going to trim dogs' toenails weekly?
Well, I've nearly been doing that with our latest little girl, Chica, because she has really long toenails, and that's sort of goodness knows from her background. But the other little tip Christine told me off the recording is to get one of those grinders, those little toenail grinder
Oh, you've
things.
got one of those? Yeah.
I've got one. I haven't used it yet, although I have been clipping.
You could try it on me. My toenails need a little bit of a grind, I think.
Yeah, well, you don't bite, so that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, you haven't seen me yet. Anyway, look, that sounds like a great idea. And, of course, that was Christine Speerin, who's one of only a handful of master groomers here in Australia. And Christine's from the Grooming School. Well, have you ever heard your vet say, your pet has a neurological condition? And like most pet owners, you don't want to appear dumb, so you just say, oh, okay. So what does that really mean? Now, Kaye had a chat recently with the Animal Referral Hospital's surgical specialist, Dr. Sarah Goldsmid, to see if there was, in fact, an easier explanation.
You're talking about neurological conditions. It's second nature to you, but most of us pet owners haven't got a clue what a neurological condition might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's kind of a term that we talk about, but not everybody understands. So neurological just means anything that involves nerves. So nerves either in the spinal cord or in the brain or down the legs to or tail, whatever. Any of the nerves at any level could be affected. And so sometimes you might see that as your dog just tripping, stumbling, knuckling over legs, or if it was higher up and affecting the brain, it might be that they start circling around to the left or right, or that they have fits, or they just aren't responsive to you in the normal way. They're not kind of looking at you when you call them, or they seem to just not be normally behaving. So there's quite a few different signs that could all relate to being neurological. There's a wide range of diseases that can affect anywhere along that path from the head down to the tail. So, lots of things that could cause problems.
So picking them up quickly means instead of just treating them as old age, you can fix them?
Yeah, and you can have really young dogs affected with spinal or neurological signs. So we've had quite a few young puppies recently that have had various infections or diseases that have caused that Neospora, toxoplasmosis. There's a weird ratworm that potentially can do it. So there's quite a lot of unusual things that young dogs and older dogs can get, and that's why we need to do a little bit more investigation sooner rather than later to try and solve the problem.
Well, I hope that explained a little bit there. That was Dr. Sarah Goldsmid from the Animal Referral Hospital in Sydney.
Fancy a ferret? I've done a couple of stories on them over the years, and they are pretty cute, although prone to giving the odd love bite, I know firsthand. But thanks to Browne, that particular story is on the VETtalktv.com website, and you'll actually get to see a ferret bite me.
Well, it made me laugh. Sorry, you're not laughing. Okay, moving on. As cute as they are, ferrets are not for everyone, and sadly, they're one of the most surrendered pets around. So, to give you a bit of a peek into the world of ferrets, we have Sue O'Keefe from Ferret Rescue on the line. Sue, welcome once again to Vet Talk.
Thank to you. It's been a long time.
It's been quite a while, hasn't it? Look, I remember when you were with us last, and you brought all the ferrets in with you, and they're climbing all over the equipment. Are you still as passionate about ferrets as you were back then?
Oh, yes, yeah, if not more. Over the years, you learn little things all the time, and the more you learn, the more you want to learn. And you do become very passionate. It's something I don't think will ever change. They're not a pet for everybody. Their personalities, they're different to a dog, they're different to a cat.
Well, they're smaller for a start. They're like a large rat, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Are they related to the rat family?
No, not at all. Okay. Rats are rodent, ferrets are mustelids.
Well, you picked me up there pretty quick.
Oh, no, it's actually one thing that annoys me when people go, oh, my God, it looks like a giant rat. And you think, oh, please, they're not. They're not a pet, as I said, for everybody. They're quite high maintenance, extremely social. I mean, you can let your dog out to play. You can't let your ferret out to play. It'll run away.
I've seen tunnels. I've seen, ferret tunnel all around the house. It was really quite interesting.
Yeah, ferrets love to be basically something over their head. They're not a great fan of open spaces. And I think that goes back to the times when, they would live in burrows.
Right.
So it's more of a genetic thing, I think, a behavioural thing that they feel secure when they're in a tunnel or underneath something.
Well, having mentioned tunnels, give us a little bit of background on what were ferrets originally used for. I mean, were they bred specifically for something? I mean, how were they used?
Okay, well, if we go back to about 1500 BC in Egypt, the ferrets were thought to have been crossed from the European and the steppe polecat.
The polecat, okay.
Yes, to give us the ferret. Now, they were originally used for ratting, to keep the rat population down. And if you recall, going back to our history, there was a time where the cat was actually thought to be a friend of the witch. It had quite an evil reputation. And it's only over the hundreds of years where the cat became favourable again, and they worked out, well, hey, a cat is a lot easier to maintain than a ferret.
Okay.
Which is why the ferret gradually was not used so much more for the ratting as cats were. Then came, let's use the rabbits for rabbiting.
Yeah.
And then the ferret became favourable for chasing rabbits out of their warrens.
Now I know where the song The Court of King Caractacus came from.
Pretty close.
The cat that ate the rat that ate the... Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And that was Sue O'Keefe from the Central Coast and Newcastle Ferret Rescue Group. Great history lesson there too.
Fantastic history lesson, and as some regular listeners will know, Sue's very much into that whole medieval thing, and as it happens, her, medieval suit of armour is a ferret.
A ferret design.
Oh, sorry. Yes, let's clarify that.
She's fun. But anyway, you can go to the VETtalk TV site and actually see Sue in action with her gear on. It's quite fun. Do you have a horse? Well, we're amazed at how many people do have horses, as they're not particularly cheap to look after. However, just like dogs and cats and birds and fish, they do need to see a vet on a regular basis. However, our next vet we're going to talk to is a little different. He graduated as your regular vet about 10 years ago and then decided to check out acupuncture as an alternative means of treating some ailments in horses in particular. So let's welcome equine vet Dr. Rob Willis, all the way from Albury, Wodonga.
You're a vet of all kinds of things, but mostly horses. An equine vet. Tell us what an equine vet does.
So, health and prevention, treatments, injuries, sickness, just the whole box and dice, I guess. But generally with horses, I do a little bit of both. I do dogs and cats as well. But yeah, certainly the bulk is horse work.
But you have more than one set of tools in your toolbox, as the saying goes, in terms of how you treat them. You're a great believer in acupuncture. What ailments really respond well to acupuncture for horses?
Most of the demand is musculoskeletal, and same with dogs. So generally sore backs, sore pelvises. If we're getting results with things like arthritis, I really do believe it's from getting soft tissue and fascial release around these structures.
Can you explain that in layman's terms?
Layman's terms, yeah, sure. I think you're putting the needles into specific points on the body to try and bring about a response in the horse. So that might be just pain relief for sore muscles. It might be respiratory things also work quite well. So horses that have, say, coughs and colds and flus and things like that. When I say like fascial release, we use it a lot for sore, stiff animals, and it's commonly known that acupuncture works really well for arthritis. My personal thoughts are, though, that where the pain relief is coming from is from the tight muscle and the wrappings around the joints that you're getting to let go rather than in the actual bone itself.
We were talking earlier about me having acupuncture on my knees for arthritis.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't last forever. But
no.
Some people said, oh, yeah, but you just wanted it to work, and that's a placebo effect. But then explained about our dog, Monet. He had a acupuncture needle. He's had several, actually. And he was just, chilled out. So there's no placebo effect with animals, is it? How does it work? How does acupuncture actually stop that pain?
It kind of depends.
30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. It kind of depends on whether you want the Chinese version or the Western version. I'll give you the Western version. There's a big endorphin release in the body when you stimulate these points, so they're kind of your feel-good chemicals in your body and your brain, and they have a pain relief effect, they think, between 10 and 100 times the power of morphine if you hit the right spot. So that's where they get that sudden sort of yawning and tiredness that comes over them too. It's like they've just had a big morphine hit, I guess, in a way.
How big is a needle for a horse compared to, say, a dog or a cat? Are they like extra large needles?
It's funny, a lot of them are actually the same size. We use a lot of what are called ting points, where we do around the coronet bands in a horse, just above the hoof. And so you only really need little needles for those spots, otherwise you're into some pretty important sort of structures there. So yeah, you'd think you'd go for a really big needle, but generally they're similar sizes.
Coronet bands, I knew what he was talking about.
You did not. You sounded like you did, though. That was very impressive.
Well, you fake it to make it, so there you go.
Oh, we love acupuncture, though, for all animals.
And Rob is a great guy. It's his equine vet, Rob Willis, from Rob's Veterinary Acupuncture and Energetics. Now, we never got on to energetics, but we'll get into that. A little bit of ooga booga doesn't hurt anyone, at least you'll learn something. He's got a practice in Albury, Wodonga, and you can actually see more of Rob on the VETtalktv.com website, as well as seeing the needles in the horse's coronet, whatever thingy.
Bingo.
It was, yeah. Alrighty, time for a quick news update with Kaye Browne.
And it will be very quick because this weekend is Halloween. I love doing that. Love it or hate it, and some people don't like it at all, but chances are there are going to be kids and some big kids dressed up as witches and ghosts and goblins, giving or receiving lollies and chocolates.
I'm going to be the ghost in the front yard waiting for the kids to come and go,
You just want to grab their chocolate, I know. So it's a bit of a timely reminder that both dogs and cats can become very, very sick if they eat chocolate. Worst case scenario, they could actually die. Now, both dogs and cats have a much better sense of smell than we do, and even though you might have thought that you'd successfully hidden your Halloween stash of Toblerone bars or Kit Kats, they will find it and eat it. And I noticed you found those little eyeball ones from...
What's your next story there, Kate?
Anyways, the theobromine, we know, combined with the caffeine in chocolate is what causes the problems. And the symptoms include rapid breathing and heartbeat, vomiting, diarrhea, etc. So if you suspect that Fluffy or Fred may have partaken, do contact your vet and get them emergency help pronto, because unlike snake bites and things like that, there's no antidote for chocolate toxicity. They might be able to get them to vomit up most of it, but, once it's in the system,
don't try
it's
and do it yourself,
worry.
basically. Get to an emergency hospital if it's after hours, or to your local vet.
Definitely. Do you hate mosquitoes? I hate them, not just because I'm very allergic to mozzie bites, but because they are often carriers of heartworm disease, which of course puts our pets at risk. It's a very deadly disease. So news from the Entomological Society of America that they may have found a non-chemical control method that really works is suitably intriguing. Even more so because there's an Australian link. You'll hear in a moment.
I was waiting for the punchline.
Male mosquitoes apparently zero in on the sound of female mozzie wing beats when they're flying and swarming. No, I don't expect you to do the sound effect. So two very clever Australian scientists came up with a cheap trap which reproduces that sound and, whammo, catches the boy mozzies. Okay, most people know that it's only the female mosquitoes that bite, but by capturing, sterilising the males, and then letting them go so that they can later mate with female mozzies, but not successfully, obviously, there aren't going to be any baby mozzies, is a great breakthrough. Now, they've actually...
I can't believe this story.
No, I love it. I love it.
I know, it's fascinating, but I can't believe it.
Well, it's great for our pets, and it's great for the global population because, as you know, mosquitoes carry all kinds of diseases, particularly malaria. So I wanted to mention this because we will hear about it in future. Mainstream media may not talk about it, but VETtalk does. And it's the brainchild of Brian Johnson and Scott Ritchie, and their article has just been published in the very prestigious Journal of Medical Entomology. It's called The Siren Song, Exploitation of Female Flight Tones to Passively Capture Male Mosquitoes.
I got a whole movie idea just there and then with that whole title.
I love it.
It's a
Let's
movie.
Get rid of mozzies.
It's a movie.
Think about the potential. No more heartworm disease, no more malaria.
Wow.
Love it. And the barbecues, mozzie free.
And I can think of the music, with the females sort of doing the dun 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 dun. Thank you for that fascinating news update. Now, you said you had something for us next week. I usually don't have any idea what's going to happen next week until next week happens.
Oh, I certainly do, because next week I think it would be cool to talk about something that's not related to horse racing.
That would be good.
Yeah, there's some kind of big event happening on the Tuesday. However, the same day, there is possibly one of Australia's most long-run dog shows actually occurs in Melbourne on the same day as the race at Flemington. However, this one's at Sunbury, and it's all to do with dogs. Dogs, huge dogs, 1,200, 1,700 dogs from 120 breeds.
Yeah.
Going to tell you all about it.
Okay, can't wait for that one. Well, there you go. That's what's going to be happening next week. And thanks for that news update, KP. If you'd like to join us again, please subscribe via the VETtalkradio.com.au website, or go to iTunes and you can just download us there and you can subscribe absolutely free.
And if you're driving anywhere, you've got lots of episodes to listen to. We can amuse you.
I know.
Send you off the road.
There are veterinary specialists who live outside of Sydney and they drive all the time. They're listening to us all the time.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah. Hi, David.
Hi, David.
I'm Brian Pickering.
I'm Kaye Browne.
See you next week. Bye.
See you then. Bye.